Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our last educational seminar of the season. It's hard to believe the summer's already over. Many of you are nearing the end of your time at your agency, and we always close out our summer with a very special panel on incorporating pro bono into your career. So this is where we bring in attorneys to share insights and practical tips from their experience about how to make pro bono fit into a busy professional life. I'm excited to introduce you to our moderator, Rachel Jennings. She is the Professional Development and Pro Bono Manager at Neal, Gerber, and Eisenberg. And prior to that, she was an Associate Director of Career Services at the University of Chicago Law School and Director of Career Services and Recruitment Programs at Chicago Kent College of Law. And Rachel also previously practiced law at Better Price as an associate in the commercial litigation practice area. So Rachel, I'll pass it off to you to welcome the rest of our panelists.
Thanks, Brent. Thanks for having me, and welcome everyone. I'm excited to see so many people here. I mean, you've got a great start with your involvement in your agencies as a PILI intern or fellow, and then I think it'll be a great stepping point for you as you go forward. I'm excited to have a conversation. I'm excited to see some familiar faces. Hi, Michelle. But let's kick it off. I'd love to introduce you to our panelists who took time today from their billable hour schedule at some great firms here in Chicago. I'd like to start and ask all our panelists to introduce themselves, tell us your name, what firm you're at, what your practice area is, and how you're affiliated with PILI. So Shenna, can we start with you?
Yeah, hi everyone. It's so great to be here. My name is Shenna Johnson, and I am a second-year associate in the corporate group at Skadden Arps here in Chicago. And I actually did a PILI fellowship with the Chicago Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. So that was my first introduction to the PILI organization. And now I serve as a graduate fellow representative on PILI's board of directors.
Thanks. Judy, let's turn to you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here. I'm a fourth-year associate at Haynes and Boone. My practice is in IP litigation. And my introduction to PILI was also through a PILI fellowship. I did mine at the Young Center for Immigrant Children's Rights. And I'm currently on PILI's YPB, Young Professionals Board as well.
That's great. I think our attendees can start to see their paths as just hearing from you just from the start. Gabe, nice to meet you. Can you tell us about yourself?
Yes, thank you for having me. Gabe Lara. I am a first-year associate at Chapman and Cutler. My interactions with PILI, I was also a PILI fellow this last summer, and I currently sit on the board as the 2020 fellow rep.
So we have several questions today. We want to hear from our panelists about the types of pro bono work they do, how the structure is of pro bono at their current law firms. But I also wanted to see, before we even start, I should note this is being recorded, but I wanted to ask just if you have any, if you have questions throughout, please type them in the chat, please raise your hand. We love to make it as interactive of a conversation as possible. And if you have the ability, wanted to see if you could raise your hand or give a reaction just to get gauge from the audience, who's PILI fellows or who's PILI interns, right? Brent, I believe we have both. So if you are a PILI fellow, meaning you're going to a firm very soon, could you raise your hand or give a reaction? Great, that's helpful. Lots of you. That's so exciting. It's an exciting time. It's a strange time as we're kind of still maybe hybrid, still going back. We'll touch on that in terms of pro bono opportunities. And if you could put your hands down, and then who's a PILI intern still in law school? Just this will help frame our conversation too. Few of you guys. Okay, great. Some of you might be going through OCI and interviews right now. Great. So we have a good mix. All right, let's kick it off. I wanted to kind of ask a broad question to start, a positive question to our panelists. Judy, we'll start with you. I wanted to ask a little bit about how you've personally benefited from doing pro bono work. You practiced for a couple of years now. Tell us a little bit about what pro bono work adds to your daily schedule and how you personally benefited from it.
So sure. So pro bono has definitely helped me start managing my cases earlier. And I think that for a lot of the my fellow panelists, they have similar experiences in terms of the pro bono work. I think junior associates and mid-level associates are given a wider range to do more work, which means that they're given more responsibilities. And that's big because you're able to look at a case from a big picture perspective earlier on, and you gain management skills, which is directly transferable to your billable work too. I can say that I've definitely had a lot of my courtroom experiences through my pro bono work. I've experienced status hearings, represented clients at the Cook County Court, and I've also worked on immigration matters as well, which gives me direct contact, client contact, at the same time correspond with the different decision makers and try to find the best solution for the client. So overall, I think pro bono has definitely benefited me. This has helped me become a better attorney, but it's also helped me appreciate the bigger picture a lot better.
I love to hear that you're doing some pro bono that's not perhaps directly related to your practice group, because you said your intellectual property, correct?
Correct.
I also love to hear that it's building your skills. My role at my firm is both professional development, building skills for attorneys, and pro bono, and I do think they go hand in hand. So I'd love to hear from you, Shenna. Could you tell us a little bit about, how pro bono has benefited you and what skills perhaps that you've developed in pro bono cases that you hadn't in some of your billable work?
I would say pro bono has really benefited me because as a corporate attorney, it kind of adds more value to my work. I wouldn't ordinarily have an opportunity to work with like underrepresented communities, which I really care about, and which kind of one of the reasons I became a lawyer in the first place. So it gives me that opportunity to have direct interaction with some of those communities and individuals and be able to add value to their lives and in turn it add values to my work as an attorney. So I think that's a huge benefit. And in terms of gaining skills, which what Judy said earlier, I work with a lot of nonprofits here in Chicago. And that's more so on the corporate side. So I have an opportunity to assist them directly, learn more about how their organizations are structured, how their boards work, which is really important as a corporate associate. So I'm gaining skills in drafting, for example, bylaws early on, interacting with the client, advising them on really important issues that may be impacting their board. So I think it allows you an opportunity to really sit down and think about the issue and how to solve the client's problem.
Shenna, if I could, I want to zero in on that because I love that you're doing some transactional work, helping nonprofits and boards, but that's related to your actual billable work too. So can you tell us a little bit about what are we might have people on the call who are going into a transactional practice, not litigating in court. Can you tell us a little bit about opportunities you've seen either at your firm or outside, or that you mentioned already that you're doing that would help, that would be transactional based, but pro bono?
Mm-hmm. So for example, I'm assisting a nonprofit based in Greater Englewood here in Chicago. So we are assisting them with a lot of their board work. They needed assistance with revamping their bylaws. And that's a core, task that you would do as a corporate associate. And then also helping them draft their conflicts of interest policies. And just other issues that they may need assistance with. For example, I actually was able to present to them on fiduciary duties last summer and let them, know like how to handle different conflicts and how to really interact with the members in their community and things of that nature. So I think that's one way you can help with nonprofits. I also assisted another nonprofit who was selling its organization to another nonprofit. So they were dissolving and merging into another organization. So I assisted with that last year as well.
That's exciting to hear about, because I think a lot of times when people initially think about pro bono, or perhaps a lot of you in your work as interns and fellows may be doing a little bit more, and I'm making an assumption, but you may be doing a little more litigation focused work. And this is nice to hear a lot about transactional opportunities too. Mm-hmm. Gabe, I wanted to turn to you and ask if you could tell us a little bit about pro bono work you've done so far that you're interested in, how you've personally benefited from your pro bono work so far.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I can echo a lot of what was said already too, because, well, I started doing some work through Ascend Justice, where I did my fellowship, where I was doing a lot of like what people will often think of as pro bono work, working on VAWA U visa cases, helping out with emergency orders of protection, very litigation focused for sure. Now as a transactional attorney in the commercial lending practice group at my firm, well, we continue to do that type of work at Chapman, ranging from, taking on asylum cases to helping out with Illinois legal answers. I know there's been a huge push through our pro bono council to encourage a lot of us to try to get involved with Illinois legal answers, since it's a very pragmatic approach to being able to provide legal advice to people in need, of course. But similarly, I've also taken on pro bono on a transactional side, where we work with specific nonprofits that focus on providing flexible loans that support housing and other initiatives in different areas of the city, where our role is to help prepare loan documents, help negotiate deals between these nonprofits so that they are able to provide flexible lending opportunities to small businesses around the Chicago area as well. So it's become a bit more multifaceted than the classic pro bono work that we've done before.
I love that. And Gabe, you mentioned, this is something I want to bring up because I think the majority of our audience is going into likely into a firm of some sort. You mentioned your firm's pro bono counsel, and I know Sarah, and she's fabulous at Chapman and Cutler, but can you tell us a little bit about how you find opportunities and pro bono opportunities and resources at either specifically to your firm or also just in general?
So Sarah is amazing. I mean, she's incredible at what she does. We often
we say who she is. She's your pro bono.
Right, Sarah Gadiri is our pro bono counsel. So she basically handles all of the pro bono opportunities that come into the firm, be it those opportunities that I mentioned that are more corporate transactional, to other opportunities like, like I mentioned, the other opportunities that are more, that we typically consider more as like U visa asylum work and whatnot. But there's the distribution list that we can be added to, where she sends over opportunities for us to be able to do different types of work. So the perfect example is there's an NIJC training on DACA renewal that she forwarded along to everyone in that distribution list. And if you have the availability and you're interested in that type of work, all you have to do is respond to her and let her know that you're interested in doing it, and it's easy peasy. Additionally, as a first year, we were encouraged to do a lot of work with Illinois Legal Answers, and similarly, when answering the questions that are popping up on the website, our pro bono counsel also offered like additional resources for us to be able to, perhaps if we're doing research on a specific topic, she was open to reading over our answers to make sure that we were catching everything, for example. So the resources for us are very easily accessible. And again, part of that is definitely that we have a great pro bono counsel that is constantly looking for opportunities for the firm, and is constantly looking for ways to continue giving back to the communities that we serve.
That's great. Shenna, can you talk a little bit about Skadden support for pro bono initiatives, or how you find pro bono opportunities either through your firm or outside of it?
Yeah, Skadden in particular in the Chicago office, there is Eddie Houlihan, who is responsible for a lot of the pro bono matters. He does a lot of the intake. So when he gets those opportunities, there is also a distribution list where he emails people who may be interested in working on those type of matters. So you get those opportunities that come across to your email, and if you're interested, you just reply or respond and say that you want to work on that. Or what I've done more recently is just let Eddie know of the types of cases or opportunities that I wanted to work on. So when I first started at the firm, I was doing a lot of immigration work. And then I realized that I also wanted to hone my more corporate skills and get more experience working with more nonprofits, especially here in Chicago, and just learning about different organizations here. So I let him know that, and he was able to find an opportunity for me and suggest partners that may be able to work on that with me as well. So that has also proven to be a good opportunity to get work.
I like that you mentioned like that he could help suggest partners for you to connect with or work on. So in that way, pro bono helps develop your internal network and connections too, especially perhaps in this virtual environment where many of us aren't in the same office every day. Judy, can you tell us about, how you find pro bono opportunities, if there's connections or institutional support at your firm, Haynes and Boone? I can't hear you. Can you guys hear Judy? I can't hear.
No, we can't hear Judy.
Oh no. Still can't hear you. Might have to circle back. Okay, we'll circle back to her. But while we're on this topic, and again, please send me questions too, or if you're maybe you're not going to a firm, but lots of larger firms do have support systems, whether it's a full-time partner, a part-time pro bono manager, whatever the role is, where they're going to help you, bring pro bono opportunities and trainings to your attention, or at the very least, like Shenna mentioned, it's good to just connect with them and say, I think I'm interested in helping children. What can I do? And those resources, for large firms in particular, have lots of resources to help you do pro bono work. So I encourage you to kind of seek those people out, meet them early, and connect with them often. But if you are going to a firm, for either you're a PILI fellow right now, you're going to a large firm, or you're an intern and you're interviewing and you're considering working at a firm, we want to ask our panelists a little bit about how their firm credits pro bono hours, because when you are working at a firm, you are working for your billable clients. And so I wanted to ask, we'll start with you, Gabe, if you could tell us a little bit about, does your firm credit pro bono hours on the same basis as billable hours? Is there a cap to how much pro bono you can do? Is there credit for pro bono? If you could just talk a little bit about the structure at your firm or other firms you've heard of, we'd love to hear that.
Yeah, absolutely. Chapman definitely encourages everyone to do pro bono work, and it is an option if there are many opportunities. So I believe we do have a cap as to how many of these pro bono hours will count towards your billable hour requirement, which is incredible in our end, because it not only is it incentivized for us to do pro bono work, but it's also to an extent rewarded. I don't remember off the top of my head what that cap is currently, but I know that one of the things that they constantly do remind us is that, hey, if you do take on any pro bono projects, it will count towards your billable hour requirement. And that's incredibly helpful even for the first year class, for example, when we're still trying to, get a feel for everything that we're doing, to be able to still be able to incorporate something so critical and to have it count towards that billable hour requirement. It's pretty great. Yeah.
Shenna, can you tell us about how pro bono work is credited or counts at Skadden?
Yeah, so pro bono work at Skadden really counts the same as billable work. There is no cap, and I think that's one of the reasons that really drew me to Skadden, is that they do emphasize that everyone should be working on pro bono. It's an important core value of the firm, and I was able to just jump right in when I started at the firm in 2019. When you first start and doing the onboarding process, things are kind of slow. So I got my first actual assignment during our training. We worked on an immigration case. So that's how important it is to the firm is that they jumpstart you and give you a case or an assignment to work on when you first start at the firm. So I was able to take that on and run with that at least in the first few weeks and work with the partner in the litigation group, so that I probably wouldn't ordinarily work with as part of my role as a corporate attorney at Skadden. So that was another way for me to facilitate relationships with others across the firm as well. So it's great. There's no cap, and it's really encouraged that you do the work and give back.
That's great to hear. Judy, I wondered if we could connect and you hear a little bit about how you find pro bono work at your firm and whether or not the pro bono hours can count at all towards billable credit.
Sure. So hopefully everyone can hear me now. Okay. All right. So Haynes and Boone has a firm-wide pro bono committee, and I'm actually on that committee, but the committee helps gather interest in projects for those who are interested. And there are periodic surveys that are sent out saying to see who's interested in pro bono work, what type of work they're interested in. And just basically when those projects arise, get in touch with them, let them know that we have these type of projects that are available. And if they still got the availability and the interest, we can get a team going. And I would say in general, there is a cap on the number of pro bono hours, but each attorney is encouraged to do pro bono, and we're all encouraged to work as a team. There's really big incentive to make sure that projects are not confined to one office, but instead we're able to work across offices. And I find that has worked really well, especially during the past 18 months, because pro bono needs arise in different areas across the country. We're all able to connect and pitch in a little bit and help out.
That's great. I'm hearing a lot about how pro bono is facilitating relationships and even across offices, which is great, just in terms of making connections. And we brought up a little bit about Illinois Legal Answers and other opportunities, but can you just tell us really quickly, Judy, if you could start, about some of the virtual opportunities for pro bono you've done, or if, you know, has your work changed in the virtual environments? Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So we talked about free legal answers, and definitely that's a project I highly recommend for you to get involved with, or you know, to even take the lead on organizing a clinic at your respective firms if your firm hasn't done one before. It really is an easy way to work together as a team and also contribute and help those in need. In other ways, I think right now it hasn't been impacted. So when the pandemic first started, I remember going to virtual hearings and, you know, becoming adjusted to that process. And I think that has worked fairly well. I mean, there's definitely its pros and cons. And I think in hindsight, there's, you know, from a technology perspective, I think that we've all done the best that we could. But I think that it's definitely just working remotely and helping make sure clients manage client expectations as to how sometimes the court dates may change, for instance, or just communicating and making sure that those avenues of communication stay open, both with the client and with the pro bono agency who I'm working with. That has changed, but I think for the most part, it's changed really better because, you know, communication, in my opinion, has never been better than before.
That's great to hear. I do have a question from the audience that I'd love to pose to all three of you, because I think it's a great question. Shenna, if we could start with you, because I think you've touched on this a little bit. The question is, do you think it's better to specialize or focus on specific types of work in your pro bono practice, or better to do a wide range of work? And I think that might vary depending on where you are in your career, but I'd love to hear from all three of you. Shenna?
I think it really depends on what you're interested in. Me personally, I would rather just have like more diverse experiences. So to me, it's really important to engage in various different opportunities. So I've done immigration work, I've worked with the election protection hotline, I've worked with nonprofits, and all of those experiences have made me hone in on different skills and just become overall a better attorney. So I think it's probably better to just have more opportunities, more diverse opportunities in your pro bono work to really gauge what you're interested in and what you may want to pursue later on.
I love that. And like you mentioned, you got to work with a litigation partner that you perhaps wouldn't have been able to work with if you were just doing one specific transactional focus, for example.
Right. Yep. And then for my immigration case, I worked with tax attorneys at the firm. So you do really have an opportunity to work with people across various groups and build those relationships.
Gabe, why don't you tell us your perspective at this stage in your career so far?
I think so. As a first year, you know, I started at my firm in January, and I think so far, I think I've been more focused on one area of pro bono work, and part of that is because, you know, I'm still acclimating to the day-to-day, acclimating to working remotely still. Prior to joining the firm, I was doing a lot of immigration work and a lot of work with emergency orders of protection, which I've been able to continue doing to an extent now. So as I mentioned, we have a clinic coming up that was set up by our pro bono counsel. And, you know, like the conversation around that came up because we were discussing the DACA opinion that came out a couple of weeks back, and she remembered, like, oh, we had this conversation. So it's definitely been an opportunity to be able to definitely, you know, network internally. But currently, as a first year, still getting acclimated to, you know, working at a firm, still getting acclimated to the work overall. I've definitely noticed that I'm probably a bit more focused on one or two different types of pro bono work than expanding. But I'm definitely looking forward to being able to expand and do more.
Yeah, it can become a question of depth of knowledge and experience in an area. And if you focus on one of those, you can gain that, or breadth of experiences and connections. So there's, I think, benefits to both options. Judy, can you tell us a little bit about, having practiced for a few more years, your thoughts on whether you should specialize on specific types of work or take on a wide range of pro bono options?
I think starting off as a junior or younger in career, it's probably better to take on a more wide variety just to get that experience and to know what type of pro bono projects are out there. But with that said, I think my advice would be for everyone to think about a cost that you care about. And if you have that cost already, then, you know, maybe you're already at that agency that you're working with. And then one idea would be to stay in touch with that agency and see if there's any pro bono projects that you can work on with them. And I think that, you know, if you don't have that cost, that's okay. I mean, I think it's just a matter of working with as many projects as you can to find what you care about. I find that it's a lot easier to be invested in a project if you care about it, right? And then the best way, I think, for a junior associate or someone, you know, a law student to get that experience would be to do work with as many agencies as possible, which you know what other projects are out there. So you're able to gather what those interests are, if they interest you, and how you can get started. Like I said, it may be at the agency that you're already at, in which case that's great. I think that you just want to stay connected with that agency and take on more of those projects to the extent that you can. And then in which case, you know, you're already on the path to incorporating pro bono into your career.
That's such great advice. And also from a connections and networking standpoint, well, we're specifically a Chicago law firm community, and the Chicago legal aid community is small. So perhaps even if you're connected to someone in that agency, at least you have that connection. And if they go to another agency, perhaps you can do work for that other agency as well because you have that connection. One thing I did want to ask all of you about too is, in addition to and adjacent to pro bono work, is you know, community service. A lot of law firms and corporations talk a lot about corporate social responsibility, and those firms are not only engaging in pro bono work, but they're also engaging in community service initiatives, and they encourage their attorneys to serve on boards. Judy, I know you mentioned you're on the Young Professionals Board for PILI. Can you just tell us a little bit about what, if anything, you're in addition to your full-time billable job and your pro bono work, but is there any, and for all of our panelists, is there any community service things that you're interested in through your firm or outside of the firm? And tell us a little bit about how you build that into your schedule.
Sure. So I think for me, I'm involved with PILI, I'm involved with other organizations too. And I think that it goes back to what I mentioned before. It really takes a lot of self-reflection and to think about what you care about. And so for me, I did some self-reflecting. I knew that after I finished my fellowship, that I really enjoyed my time as a PILI fellow. I want to stay involved with PILI. And I wanted to make a difference at in the pro bono sphere at a larger level as well. And at that time, PILI was incorporating a young professionals board. And I thought that would be a great way for me to stay involved with PILI and give back and also become a future leader. And so that really led me to my path towards the young professionals board. And also like similarly with the other organizations that I'm part of as well. It really is what I'm interested in and how I think I can give back the most to the community. I do think that we as lawyers are in a very privileged state, and in which case that they're in a position to give back. And they can really help out a lot of people in this community. And so, again, I would encourage people to think about, what you care about and how you can give back. If there's an organization that you would like to be a part of, maybe look them up online and see if they have young professional boards or other boards, or maybe they have a fundraising board, like a community service event you can be a part of or something. I personally, I know I do a lot of running. So I do a lot of 5Ks, virtual 5Ks these days. And that's one way I stay involved with the other community as well, just by looking up to see what type of runs are available. The hot chocolate one is one that I'm a big fan of because I care about the cause a lot. And it's easy for me to build into my schedule these days because of these virtual runs. You can just do it anytime within a given set period of time. And so that's, just an example. But again, I think it's just, the answer is it's so specific to each individual. Again, I would just recommend doing some self-reflecting to find the cause that you care about and find ways that you can build it in.
That's great advice. And connecting with perhaps a firm you're joining might have both a pro bono counsel and a corporate social responsibility or CSR or community service resource as well. So just to look for that when you join. Shenna or Gabe, did you want to add anything else about, just community service or community involvement in addition to your pro bono work and your full-time billable jobs?
Sure. I mean, I can echo what Judy said too. Ever since well, I have to think maybe before law school. I think I was involved in the Run Domestic Violence Out of Town organization. So I too was running 5Ks, and in 2020 I was fundraising to run the marathon, and that type of stuff is super important. And it's one of those things that you can do on a Saturday morning that, as I mentioned it to my coworkers, they are interested in not only the mission of the organization, but also in seeing how they themselves can get involved. A lot of those type of initiatives are welcome at the firm. I remember as a summer in 2019, they had a couple of different initiatives that were similar to, running a 5K, but it was more of like a challenge that lasted throughout the summer where you were biking to work, so there are a couple of different initiatives that we can get involved in through the firm or independently that the firm will be happy to hear about. And likewise, when I joined the PILI board as a fellow rep, that was something that the firm welcomed as well. Of course, there's always a process when you're trying to get involved in different nonprofits or different boards. There's always a process that you have to go through with your firm. And part of that process is explaining this is why it's important, not just to me, but why it's important overall to the community. And again, the flexibility is always there.
That's great to hear. We do have another question from the audience, and I think this is a great question about just managing your time and pro bono clients versus billable clients. So the question is, have you ever had a conflict between the demands of your billable work and the pro bono work? And how have you handled that? For example, being able to meet a pro bono deadline or not being able to meet it because urgent billable work has come up. So Shenna, maybe you could take that to start. Have you experienced that, or how do you manage that? How do you treat pro bono clients versus billable clients?
I think it's really all about balance, and I don't try to distinguish between the two. I think they're equally important. So if I have a pro bono deadline, I just do my best to make it. Or if I need assistance, then I just bring in other team members that would be able to help me to meet that goal. So I think it's just really using your time wisely, planning your day, planning your tasks, what you want to accomplish is what I generally try to do, and just try to balance and make sure that I'm using, calendars or schedules or whatever to stay ahead of those deadlines so that it doesn't get lost into the busy work that we do on a day-to-day basis.
I think that's so important that they're clients regardless. Pro
Right.
bono, Gabe, can you tell us about being a first-year associate, how you're able to kind of, I think some of that comes just through experience, right? Being able to know when deadlines will come up or how much you can take on. Can you tell us about the process of taking on pro bono when you're still building your billable workbook?
I think for me, communication has been incredibly important. So the pro bono work that I've done so far has been with a team for sure. Similar to similar to what Shenna said, there is, they are your clients, your pro bono clients are still your pro bono clients, and my firm doesn't really distinguish between the two. So for me, it's been incredibly useful to be able to communicate with my team with the team that I'm part of, that's supervising me, that's helping me navigate not just my pro bono work, but also my billable work, to be able to know what resources I can leverage from the firm to continue to stay afloat. A perfect example is, the different groups, be it the library service or our conversion group, all of those groups are accessible to us, whether we're dealing with pro bono clients or billable work. So for me, it's been incredibly important to just be able to communicate with whoever I'm working with to say, well, I don't think I've ever done anything like this before. What does the timeline usually look like? So that way I can better understand what my next couple of weeks are going to be looking like, not just for the pro bono client, but in conjunction with all the other billable work that has to get done. But I can't stress the importance of being able to leverage those resources that are available from these firms, because that's what helps you become more efficient little by little. It helps keep up with your deadlines. And similarly, my calendar has absolutely everything in there. There's reminders, there's deadlines, it's all there. But that's just another resource that I'm slowly learning to leverage as a first year.
I'm so glad you brought up the different resources that your firm has, because that's such an important piece to learn as a junior attorney, that there's a lot that you don't have to do. There's people to help you and things to help you. And if you're asked to take on a pro bono project, I just want to note, you can always go to other resources in your firm to help you if you don't think you can, but perhaps it's a very high up attorney in your group. There's other resources that you can go to, whether it's your professional development team or your mentor or something else to kind of help you manage that too. So I think the key point is there's lots of resources to help you even with time management when you're starting out, and then eventually good time management skills will help you navigate all of that. I do want to make sure that we are speaking to some of the law students in our audience who may even be going through interviews at this moment, doing some callback interviews or OCI. But if we have any law students on the line who are very committed to pro bono and public service, but are also interested in working at a firm, I wanted to ask all three of our panelists. Judy, we'll start with you. Your thoughts on, is it okay for students to ask about pro bono and the firm's pro bono initiatives in an interview? If so, how and when? Or do you think it's better that they just ask about it in kind of networking calls rather than in the formal interview?
I think depending on the interview, I think it's always good to ask during the interview. And my thoughts are, because it's really, in my opinion, pro bono is so important. It is such an important part of being an attorney that I think that most firms, if not all firms, should have some sort of pro bono system in place. And I think that they'll be very open in sharing about it. And I think that it's going to be important because you do want to know from an interviewing perspective too, what resources there are, what type of projects has the firm worked on, and also going directly to these little hours. How does that work? What are the hours that count towards that requirements? And just in general, I think how does that factor into the long-term vision of the firm? And going again, the interviewing process is important, but in my opinion, interviews are always it's a two-way street, right? On one hand, your firm is interviewing you, but you are also interviewing the firm. And you always want to know what the firm has, right? In terms of the resources that are available, in terms of what credits count. And I think it's a fair question, and it should be asked during the interview.
What are your thoughts on that? Should they ask in an interview? If so, like how would they do a screening interview, callback interview? What are your thoughts?
I echo everything that Judy just said. I definitely, if pro bono work is a priority for you, I think you should be asking that question. I don't think you should shy away from it, whether it's in an interview, the screening interview, if it's super important to you, or even in a networking event. I think you should feel comfortable to ask, because ultimately you want to be in a place that supports your values. So that's something that you value. I think you should ask. I don't think you should shy away from it.
That's great to hear. Are there any particular questions that you asked Shenna or Gabe that you thought were in an interview that you thought worked well to help you figure out where you wanted to go? Or on the flip side, for all three of you, have you been asked by law students a question that you thought, wow, they put it really well?
Generally, when I was going through the on-campus interview process, I typically look at the profiles of the attorneys that would be interviewing me and see what type of work that they do. And generally, they will have some type of pro bono like information on their website, any type of cases they were involved in. So I would just ask about their experiences. What was the experience like? How did it help progress your career? And I think it's just you doing a little bit of research and then asking some really good questions and make it natural, make it part of the conversation.
Yeah, I agree completely. I mean, I know that when I was going through the interview process, I was a little concerned about asking that question, the pro bono question, But one of the things that I think helped me throughout that process was my resume listed my volunteer experience. I was involved with different legal nonprofits throughout law school, doing a variety of things, and it always came up almost naturally. Because law firms do encourage a lot of pro bono work. So when they saw that I had a volunteer section and it listed the different nonprofits, it just almost came up naturally. Additionally, like going through the interview process itself can be, I can understand that it can be stressful. So I always encourage people to definitely do some research on who they're interviewing with, because yeah, like Shenna said, that information is often out there, and it's you'll be surprised how much pro bono work people will really be doing, and it's such an easy way to make this conversation more natural and a more natural way of bringing up pro bono at the firm itself.
Judy, have you had any questions posed to you, or did you ask anything that you would recommend our attendees ask?
I think I would agree with what Shenna and Gabe said. And I think that doing that advanced research is important. And I think that firms have the pro bono information on their websites. But when you're interviewing with a specific attorney, if they've worked on a specific project that you're also interested in, I think it's helpful to bring that up and just say, I noticed that it's absolutely fine. I noticed on your bio that you worked on this type of project. I'm also really interested in this type of work. Can you tell me a little bit more? And I think that, attorneys would be more than happy to share about their experiences and their thoughts, because it's, I am sure that, to put them on their bio, they worked on it and they care about the cause. And I'm sure they're more than happy to share about that, their thoughts, and to just see, to pay it forward as well. So again, just doing that advanced research, see what the firm has worked on, and maybe also I would add, maybe see what the firm has not worked on too. And because that's an area that it's not closed off. Just because the firm hasn't worked on it before doesn't mean that they can't work on it, right? It may be something that you can take the lead on. It may be something that they just haven't been involved in that organization before. And then if you care about it and if you're interested in getting involved, you can be the lead and start that initiative at your firm and say, hey, I care a lot about this cause, this organization. I think we could really get involved with them. Then I think most firms will be supportive of that.
That's great advice. I just had a first-year associate come to me in my firm and say, I'm interested in this kind of work. It doesn't appear that we've worked with this agency before. Can I get in touch? And I connected them, and the associate and the partner are working on matters for that agency. So that's a great piece of advice too, to look at what the firm hasn't done and maybe even ask if firms are open to that. To this point, I want to maybe kind of start wrapping up and interview you guys as if we were in an interview and ask if you could tell us either, I have kind of two questions. One is if you could just tell us one of your most recent, most memorable pro bono projects, or just kind of even make it more general. What's one piece of advice you would have really wanted to hear, key advice that you wanted to hear about as a new associate incorporating pro bono into your career? So you can answer either or both. But again, it's just tell us about a memorable recent pro bono project, or just more generally, what's one piece of advice you really want to impart and you wish you heard when you were starting as a new associate? Judy, I'll start with you.
So on the advice, I would say it's the advice I wish I heard would be it is never too early to lead. And I think that's especially important on pro bono cases, because like I said at the beginning, there's a lot of latitude for junior associates to contribute and take the lead on projects and really take the lead on the direction of the case. And so don't be afraid to take the lead on it. Don't be afraid to say, I want to talk to the client. Don't be afraid to say, I want to take the lead on drafting this. And definitely if it's a courtroom opportunity, don't be afraid to say, I want to go to court and I want to go represent the client on this issue. I think that, again, there's a lot of opportunities on the pro bono side. And I think that it really is, junior associates are given more freedom to do that substantial work at the beginning, as opposed to other work in which they might be so staffed that you're not getting as much of that exposure as otherwise you would have. And I think that going along lines with the same issue of what project the firm has not worked on, definitely if there's a case out there, if there's an agency out there that the firm has not worked on, don't be afraid to make that case to the firm and say, I really care about this project. And I think that's a great cause to support. And these are the steps I'm thinking of. And I think that that's a great way to make your case. I think lawyers are advocates. And I think that there's a project that your firm has not worked on, then be that advocate for that organization. Be that advocate for that type of project and say, this is an organization that, has done all these great things. I really want to be a part of it. I think the firm will benefit in these ways from it. Let me take a lead on it. I think, again, most firms will be very supportive of it. And I think, again, lawyers, it's never too early to lead. Always be from the beginning.
Good advice. Shenna, do you have a piece of advice that you would have wanted to hear as a new associate, or could you tell us about a memorable recent pro bono project, or both?
As far as advice, I would say probably that there's something that I wish I would have learned early on when I first started out at Skadden, is that there's really no limit to the pro bono work that you do. I actually just learned this recently because I have a really good friend in our DC office who has been taking what Judy said, an active lead and bringing on different pro bono clients. So I didn't know that was something that we could do, just actively engage people in the community who may need assistance and bringing those clients to the firm. So I think that's something that I want to focus on next for the remainder of this year and moving forward, is that you can really take the lead. There's no limits. The firm really supports that type of work and that type of initiative. And ultimately, it looks good for you as an associate to really lead and do the work as well.
Gabe, what about you?
I mean, I can definitely relate to a lot of what Judy and Shenna said. I guess I can kind of answer the half and half of the questions. I think one of the more memorable experiences I've had in these last few months was a partner reaching out and saying, I have this great pro bono opportunity that I'd like you to take the lead on. It was terrifying, I can tell you that much. You know, as a first year associate, to think about taking the lead on absolutely anything, it can be pretty frightening. But I think one of the key things is, again, I mentioned communication. I mean, when I got that email, I said yes, but can you continue like supervising me throughout this, because I have no idea what's going on. And I think really it's like being able to get out of your comfort zone a little bit, being able to shake off that that concern that often comes, that imposter syndrome that comes with like the first year of your like career, and taking on the opportunities, especially when there's a mentorship opportunity that comes along with it, where a partner or a senior associate is also willing to supervise you. Definitely take a stab at things. Try not to be too scared to say, yes, I'll take this on. But also make sure that you're communicating. If you feel like you might not necessarily be able to handle the matter, the opportunity on your own, be able to communicate and say, yes, but can you continue to supervise me? Is it okay for me to continue bothering you on all of this stuff? Yeah, I would suggest, just take the opportunities that come along, and make sure that you're communicating when you might not necessarily know how to proceed with them.
Such great advice. I'm so impressed by you. I'm so impressed by our panelists and grateful for your time. I wanted to give our audience, our attendees, a chance to ask any last minute questions. Either type it in or just unmute yourself. If you have any other questions for our panelists today, whether you're a law student going through interviews or you're going to start your career as an attorney. Don't see any other questions.
I'll just add, I think Gabe just made a really good point. So I'll just add to that a little bit. Don't be afraid to ask for help, especially on pro bono projects. And for me, my pro bono project is not my practice. I practice IP litigation. So for me, there's always a learning curve at the beginning when I take on a new type of project. And I think for me, definitely don't be afraid to reach out, whether it's to your supervisors, your pro bono agencies, or other team members, and just say, what do you guys think? How should we do this? And just, again, help is there. Just make sure that you're communicating and make sure that you're asking for help if and when you need it.
And that's great advice for practice in general. But especially, right, if you're working in an area that's not your main practice area. Well, I want to thank Judy, Shenna, and Gabe for your time and for your incredible pro bono service and community work. I'm impressed to have just gotten to know you better in this short hour we've had together. And I want to thank everyone for attending this. Brent, do you have any other?
No, thank you very much. I like to say dozens of muted claps to Rachel, Shenna, Judy, and Gabe. Thank you very much. It was really great advice and good tips. And then, thank you everyone for joining us this summer for our educational series. This is our last session. I hope that you've learned a little bit from our session, been inspired to continue doing the work that you're doing. And I hope that we've kind of created a small virtual community of pro bono and public interest minded attorneys. So pass that along, keep that in your heart. So, and please stay connected to PILI, sign up for our newsletter, join us for future events. We have our alumni reception on Thursday this week at 5:30. So I hope to meet some of you in person then. And thank you all for joining us this summer. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.